Good morning, Paul Ruppel here with Fox 29 News Now. Hope you had a great weekend. Happy Monday. We are following a bunch of stories this morning. We're getting to you a little bit later. It's a busy day here at Fox 29. We have the premiere of our brand new game show, The Classroom, which will air at noon on Fox 29 weekdays from 12 till 12:30, and then followed by The Q, hosted by our own Quincy Harris. So busy day, busy morning, but we want to get you a couple stories this morning, and then we're going to take you to the president speaking about a replacement for the NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Let's get you first a look at, actually let me show you right now. This is a live shot of, I believe that's the Rose Garden at the White House, where we expect the president to speak at about 11 a.m. We'll take you there live. Also going to show you, this is a scene in Las Vegas where they're pausing to mark the 1 year since the deadly shooting that occurred in the casino area. Got a little bit of information about what's happening there. Tonight, the Las Vegas Strip is going dark to mark last year's deadly shooting. Vegas is remembering those affected by the Route 91 Harvest Festival shooting. The day's events will include a sunrise remembrance ceremony, which is what you're seeing here, prayer vigils, and that blackout along the Strip tonight. That'll start 1 minute after 10 p.m. The solemn day will conclude with a reading of the names of the victims at the city's community healing garden. So you're seeing live shots of folks gathered for that sunrise remembrance ceremony. That's out in Vegas. And again, here's a shot of the podium in the Rose Garden where we expect to hear from President Trump about the replacement for NAFTA. Announcement over the weekend, I think it was late last night, that the United States has a deal with both Mexico and Canada, so we'll get you there as soon as we can. In the meantime, we've been following a big story in our area over the weekend. Let's get you some information about that. This was, of course, the Allentown car explosion that occurred over the weekend. Our Jenny Joyce was out in Allentown today, where federal authorities are now investigating that weekend car explosion that left 3 people dead. It happened right in the middle of a busy street in Allentown. Here's Jenny's report from this morning.
Good morning, guys. Yeah, so it happened here behind me on Turner Street between 7th and 8th. You can see investigators are down there looking down at the ground at some of the debris. There's still a good amount of debris here after the car was removed from the scene last night. All of this after that car exploded Saturday night. It was around 9:30. Viewer Mike Hunter shared this video with us. He says he started filming within minutes after the first explosion. He says a second explosion happened while he was rolling. He could not believe the scene. Remnants of 3 men's bodies scattered down the block. Investigators are calling the explosion criminal. They believe one of the 3 men killed is responsible for the bomb. They have not discussed a motive or circumstances surrounding this explosion. We talked to a witness who shot that cell phone video. He describes a chaotic scene on Saturday night.
I'm on turn and I'm hearing a big, great explosion. I'm thinking kids were playing with fireworks and stuff like that, so I'm thinking nothing of it. So I rushed to the scene, but I seen other people running to the scene. So as I'm going to the scene, I hear, oh, the car exploded. So I rushed to the scene and I seen a hand on the floor.
We're in the very early stages of this investigation. It's a large scene.
This was A, an isolated incident, and B, there's no continuing threat as a result of it.
The ATF is leading this investigation. The FBI, Lehigh County DA's office, and Allentown police are assisting. Back out here live, you can see that this block is still shut down to vehicular traffic, but anyone who lives on this block is allowed to go home. They just have to be escorted by police. We are told that some people did not want to return because maybe their windows were blown out during the explosion. That happened on this block. And also some people are still scared. Back to you guys.
Another story in our area this weekend, the New Jersey gas tax. Getting gas in New Jersey is costing you more. Starting today, the gas tax is going up by 4.3 cents a gallon. The increase was met with anger from taxpayers still reeling from the 23-cent per gallon increase in 2016. But tax collections have fallen short the past 2 years, prompting the Murphy administration to announcement last month that it was raising the tax again. Fox 29's Steve Keeley has been out at the pumps all morning. Here is his report with more information.
As the clock struck midnight and the calendar turned to October 1st, signs at New Jersey gas stations went up 4 and 5 cents on the price of gallons of gasoline. After no tax hike in New Jersey in nearly 30 years since 1988, the gas tax in New Jersey now has its second raise in less than 2 years. As one politician said, 6 other tax hikes ago, New Jerseyans are now being taxed to death. Another rounded off nickel a gallon means another $1 for a 20-gallon fill-up.
It is for transportation funding, and we want to make sure that the roads and the bridges are safe for those using it. New Jersey is increasing their gas tax to do just that. The good news is, depending on how you look at it and where you live, New Jersey and Delaware still have lower gas prices than we do in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania has the highest gas tax in the country. Over 77 cents per gallon is going to state and federal gas tax when you fill up in Pennsylvania.
I still got to get to work, so I still got to pay it. So what am I going to do, really? Yeah. You know? It's cheap right now. At least it's cheap enough right now. I can afford it, so hopefully it doesn't go up too much higher.
You don't have a choice. You got to fill up, you got to drive, and you just find other ways to try to save some money. And there's no choice. A few years ago it was almost $4, and we managed with that, so just do what we have to do.
2 years ago, New Jersey's gas tax was just 14.5 cents a gallon. Now it's above 41 cents. It went from the second lowest in the nation to now in the top 10 highest. And the only thing that makes it not seem so bad is that the number 1 gas tax in the country is just over the bridges in Pennsylvania, and number 2 just over the North Jersey bridges and tunnels in New York.
We're used to it in Pennsylvania, which is why people who live in Pennsylvania and who work in New Jersey, it's not as important to them to fill up when they're in New Jersey with the New Jersey gas tax increase. People are, again, buying out of convenience now as opposed to just waiting until they cross the bridge.
In Pennsauken, Steve Keeley, Fox 29 News. Back to you.
Apologies that we were missing some of the audio there, for the sound from the AAA representative, but hope you got the gist from Steve's reporting there about the origins of the tax and why it's going up again this year. And we've had lots of reaction to it on social media. Feel free to visit fox29.com or our Facebook page, Facebook/Fox29 Philadelphia, to weigh in and tell us your thoughts on the tax. And I'm sure many are not thrilled to be paying more for gas. I'm sure there's some benefits to the money that's collected, but we've seen pretty one-sided reaction on that story so far. Also, we've been following, if you were with us last week, we had a huge following on YouTube for the stream of, I'm looking at our camera from Washington, D.C. I see folks starting to gather, but I don't see the president yet, so we'll take you there as soon as that happens. But back to what I was saying. Last week on air, online, we had a huge following for the hearing that was occurring in Washington, D.C., the nomination hearing for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Senate Republicans plan to move forward this week with a vote. They did offer a one-week reprieve for an FBI investigation. The vote's now scheduled to happen just a day after a woman who has accused Kavanaugh of sexual assault is expected. She testified last week, as we said, on Capitol Hill. Fox 29's Fox News correspondent Doug Luzader picks up the story this morning.
These are going to be some busy days ahead for the FBI, moving forward with this investigation into Judge Brett Kavanaugh that is supposed to wrap up later this week.
I denied the allegation immediately.
Will Brett Kavanaugh's nomination make it through the week? The FBI is now digging into some of the sexual assault allegations that he faces, but it's not clear what, if anything, they'll be able to dig up.
But having them do a thorough investigation, I actually think will be a blessing in disguise. It'll be a good thing.
President Trump trying to put a positive spin on the delay, but just yesterday some frustration showed through on Twitter as he wrote that for Democrats, it will never be enough. Stay tuned and watch. And it is true that Democrats are now questioning the one-week investigation timeline that was part of last week's deal, as well as the scope of the FBI probe.
Finally, we're going to get one, and the question is, are we going to get the kind of investigation that is thorough and fair?
And many Kavanaugh opponents want an expansive investigation that will look into not just the assault allegations, but also what Kavanaugh's drinking habits were back in college and high school, a bridge too far for many Republicans.
He's highly respected, not one hint of impropriety, and they tried to destroy his life. I voted for Sotomayor and Kagan. This was about delaying the hearing, keeping the seat open past the midterms so it could be filled in 2020.
And as far as the scope of the investigation, the White House says that this is all up to the Senate, that the administration is not micromanaging the FBI. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
Another major story we followed last week was the sentencing of entertainer Bill Cosby. He got 3 to 7 years, I believe it was, 3 to 10 years on sexual assault case. Attorney Kristen Gibbons is one of the women who helped prosecute Bill Cosby in both of his sexual assault trials. And this morning she joined Mike and Lauren on Good Day Philadelphia to talk about her role in the case.
All right, 7:52. I've been wanting to meet this woman one-on-one for a couple of years now. One of the women who helped prosecute Bill Cosby in that, well, actually both of his sexual assault trials is with us this morning.
So you can see her there, Kristen Gibbons Faden, walking next to Andrea Constand right in that video. And she's here on the set with us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning to both of you.
Now, here's the thing. She still agreed to do this interview because I said, I've always wanted to meet you. And she says, Mike, I've met you 3 times.
Tell the truth about, he walked over and shook her hand. Hey, nice to meet you. And she didn't even shake back. I've met you 3 times.
I've met you 3 times, you jerk. No, good to see you again.
Great to be here.
Relieved that it's all over? It's 2 trials, 3 long years, almost.
Yeah, I'm very relieved. I'm relieved for Andrea and her family. I'm relieved for the supporters, the advocates. I'm relieved for everyone.
How did you talk her into going to trial? Because she was resistant up there in Canada.
So you know what? She really was never resistant. She was just, she wanted to know more about the process.
Oh.
She wanted to know what it involved. But the whole time, she was steadfast, she was courageous, and she said, you know what? This is my civic duty. What does it entail? I'm willing to cooperate in any fashion that I need to.
Well, then, but people give you a lot of credit, though, for helping her through the process. I mean, look at the way you two look at each other. Like, there's love and respect.
Yeah, but in all sexual assault crimes, you have to be able to build the rapport before you have to ask them to do something very challenging, which is to get on the stand, subject yourself to cross-examination and public scrutiny, and tell about very humiliating details of your life.
In front of the person that you're
in front of your accuser, exactly.
Yeah.
So, Kristen, you left, went to private practice, but came back for the second trial, for the sentencing. Why was it important for you to go back to that case?
I really wanted to follow it through for Andrea Constand. It's very difficult, like I said, to have to build a rapport with a sexual assault victim. And so being able to remain part of the process through every step of the way was important for me, for Andrea.
I probably should have Lauren ask this question, but it's in my head, so I'm going to ask it.
So you ask it.
Obviously, you're African American.
Sure.
You grew up in this area. Bill Cosby, America's dad, he's a Philadelphian. And you're going after, you know, one of our heroes. Did you get backlash?
Did I get backlash? What do you think? Of course I did.
Well, that's the reason I brought it up.
Absolutely, I did get backlash. But at the end of the day, people trusted me. They know that when I look at the evidence, I follow the evidence. And I will fairly and conscientiously follow the evidence and recommend any decision that is in accord with the law. Mm-hmm. And in this particular case, there was enough evidence to prosecute him beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's why, when I was speaking to now Judge Risa Furman and current DA Steele,
right,
they also conscientiously looked at the evidence, and we were confident in our ability to be able to bring forth enough evidence to charge him beyond a reasonable doubt. Doesn't mean you're going to win, right?
No.
But you have to have that.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Willingboro, New Jersey.
Willingboro.
Carl Lewis, Olympian.
Yeah.
Yes.
Middle school?
I went to middle school at Morristown Friends School.
High school?
Initially 9th grade in Morristown Friends School, and then we moved over to the Pittsburgh area, so I went to Quaker Valley, which is located in Swickley.
Law degree from?
Temple Law.
Temple. I mean, you're Philly, Delaware Valley through and through.
That's right.
Did you ever imagine at your tender age that you'd be well known around the country now? I mean, and involved in such a high-profile case?
Never.
Never. How are you holding up through all of it? Has it been hard?
It's been difficult, but my husband has been such a great support. My family is wonderful. And my 2 little kids are amazing. So I have a lot of support, so they've been keeping me strong.
You're private now? Private practice?
I am a private practice at Stradley Ronan, firm in the city.
Oh, I've heard that. Yeah. I've heard of them. They're big time.
I have to ask you this, on the heels of this trial, hearing so much about sexual assault in general, the movement has just grown since we first heard of accusations coming out. And the Kavanaugh hearings happening right now are so divisive in our country. When you heard Dr. Ford's testimony, when you heard Judge Kavanaugh's testimony, any of that kind of resounding with you hearing all this from the Cosby case?
Sure, yes. You know, when you look at a victim's testimony, there's certain things that you like to look at. And the reason I say this is because for closing arguments, time and time again, I would point these things out to a jury. Look at how they react. Look at the questions that they're able to answer. Look at the detail and specificity by which they're able to answer certain questions. And look at their honesty in being able to recognize when they can't answer certain questions. And I have to say, I saw all of those qualities in Dr. Ford.
Even though that was not a trial.
No, it was not.
It's a job
Yes,
interview.
absolutely.
Okay, I'm fixated on this. Just real quickly here. So you go and you got to make your case in the courtroom, and Bill Cosby's sitting right there. What was the night before like for you? I mean, you have to go face to face with an icon.
Yeah.
Every
night before was very difficult for both me and my husband. But you know what? My husband's an attorney, too.
Yeah.
And so he was helping me every step of the way, listening to me, listening to the closing argument, the opening argument for the first trial. And so I had a lot of support.
Yeah.
So I can't say that I did it all on my own, but it was challenging.
So that's why you could never be your husband, because you're not a lawyer. Right, Kristen? He was wondering.
Somebody get Temple Law on the phone. I can get a degree within a matter of years, decades. Would you do me a favor?
Absolutely.
Could you come back?
Absolutely.
And talk
I'd
about
love to.
other cases
Absolutely.
with us?
Anytime.
That'd be great. How about tomorrow? No. Thank you so much.
Anytime you need.
That was attorney Kristen Gibbons, one of the prosecutors on the Bill Cosby case, joining Good Day Philadelphia this morning, Mike and Lauren, to discuss the case, how the sentencing went last week, and more. Reminder, we're waiting for President Trump to come out and speak. He is expected to talk about a deal to replace NAFTA. I believe U.S. negotiators reached a deal with Canadian negotiators over the weekend. It was announced Sunday night. This deal would replace the North American Free Trade Agreement. U.S. had previously reached an agreement with Mexico and needed to bring Canada into the new deal. It sounds as if that has occurred. Markets are responding positively to the news. Right now, the market is up about 260 points. That's a full percentage point. Dow Jones Industrial is at 26,722 at the moment. According to Fox Business News, the stocks opened higher Monday as Canada and U.S. reached that trade deal. It also includes Mexico, and key changes at the top of major corporations boosted investor sentiment. Equities got an additional lift from GE, whose shares popped about 15% after the struggling conglomerate replaced John Flannery as CEO. And shares of Tesla surged by the same percentage on news that company founder Elon Musk has agreed to step down as CEO for now less than 3 years. And it was Sunday that the United States and Canada confirmed they had reached a deal on that new modernized trade agreement, they're calling it, designed to replace the 1994 NAFTA. The two nations said in a joint statement that the new deal will be called the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. The agreements reportedly boost U.S. access to Canada's dairy market and protect Canada from possible U.S. auto tariffs. Again, we're waiting for President Trump to come out and speak about this deal. We're expecting him momentarily. Members of his economic team appear to be gathered on the behind the podium, ready to provide the background for the president's announcement here. While we're waiting for that to get underway, let's take a quick look at weather conditions here in Philadelphia. Here's a look outside our studios at 4th and Market in Old City, Philadelphia. 70 degrees right now outside, dew point 63. Winds out of southwest at 10 miles per hour. So we're going to get a little bit warmer than we have of late. Had some nice cool temperatures. I know Mike Masco was telling us over the weekend that it was we had an autumn classic or two there. Warm days and brisk, not too brisk, chillier nights than temperatures dropping into the 50s, maybe the 60s in some cases. We'll show you some current temperatures. There you have them. 60 Mount Pocono is the cool spot at the moment. 60s in the northern suburbs, 70 in Philly, and 70 to the south and east. 74 at the shore at Wildwood, and 73 in Atlantic City, so a little bit warmer down there. In the northeast, you see Ocean City, Maryland at 75. How about Toronto, 46? Very cool up there, and 50s up along the U.S.-Canada border. Upper 70s to our south. And looking at national temperatures, we got 76 down in Miami, 86 down in Miami, 87 in Tampa, 84 in New Orleans, but cooler temperatures not too far away in Houston at 72, 76 in Dallas. 60s out on the west coast at the moment, where the day's starting. Plains, northern plains, you see 37 in Billings, Montana. Starting to get some cool early temperatures up in those parts. Our weather by the numbers, we're calling today a 10. It's looking like an excellent weather day. You'll see we've got a little bit of a breeze out there. Around 10 to 13, Philadelphia and Wilmington. A little breezier at the shore than it is up toward north and west. Not many gusts, but a lot of the wind. Those arrows pointing to the north and east. Heat index feels a little bit warmer than it is at the moment. About the same. 74 in Philly, 75, 76 in Wildwood and Atlantic City. Pretty clear out there. 10s for visibility. Nothing really to speak of on Doppler, as you can see. Not much on the radar at all. Let's see if I can show you a wider radar shot. It's not expecting too much rain in the near future. Looks like our meteorologists were using the radar feed to get a look at what's in the future cast. Here's your satellite. See, not a lot of cloud cover in our area. Let's get you the 7-day forecast. 80 degrees, sunny and warm today. There we said that perfect 10 from the Fox 29 Weather Authority. Sun to storms Tuesday, 81. See, low overnight tonight will be 65, so a little bit warmer than it's been, but still decent sleeping weather. We'll call Tuesday an 8. Wednesday we're looking at a 9, mostly sunny, 82. But there's a chance of some, as shown there, from Tuesday into Wednesday, a chance of some storms and rain. Thursday sunny and warm, 84. Friday partly sunny, cooler, 75. Cooling down a bit there, about a 9-degree drop between days. Saturday partly sunny, 71, and sun and clouds, 78 for the Eagles' home game on Sunday. Here's a live look at the Ben Franklin Parkway. While we're waiting for the president to come out, let's take you on a quick tour of our live weathermetrics cameras from around the region. We'll show you all those right now. You can see that crane in Wilmington, Delaware, swinging into action. Let's take you back to the White House, where we're awaiting the president's remarks on the new trade agreement with Canada and Mexico, announced Sunday night. I believe this was slated to begin at 11 a.m., so we're expecting it to occur at any moment. There's Vice President Mike Pence making his way to his seat. So this should commence momentarily. Let's listen in.
Ladies and gentlemen, the program will begin in 2 minutes.
2-minute warning.
So this deal will solidify the North American Free Trade Agreement between the three countries, United States, Mexico, and Canada, after more than a year of tension. The deal allows U.S. farmers more access to Canada's dairy market and exempts U.S. auto tariffs. Renegotiating NAFTA was one of President Trump's campaign promises. The president resolved negotiating issues with Mexico back in August, but several conflicts with Canada remained. U.S. and Canadian officials say the signing of the deal will result in more opportunities for both countries. The president is expected momentarily to be here to speak about the deal. We'll listen in to the ceremony that's about to begin here in the Rose Garden.
ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Thank you very much. Please sit down. It's really great to see everybody on this beautiful, beautiful day in Washington, D.C. Some people say the swamp, but I will not say that today. I refuse. This is too important, what we're doing. One of the most important deals and the most important trade deal we've ever made by far. I want to thank Senator Joni Ernst for being here. Joni, thank you very much. Of Iowa, and I'll be there very soon. We'll be doing something very important in Iowa, but this is maybe more important than all of it put together, right, Joni? So I want to thank you for being here. Congressman Holding, Congressman Rowe, Congressman Newhouse, and Congressman Meadows, thank you all for being here. We very much appreciate it. You've been very instrumental. Thank you. I'm thrilled to speak to the American people to share truly historic news for our nation and indeed for the world. I want to thank Vice President Pence for joining us this morning. It's my great honor to announce that we have successfully completed negotiations on a brand new deal to terminate and replace NAFTA and the NAFTA trade agreements with an incredible new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement called USMCA. It sort of just works. MCA. USMCA. And that'll be the name, I guess, that 99% of the time we'll be hearing, USMCA. Has a good ring to it. I have long contended that NAFTA was perhaps the worst trade deal ever made. Since NAFTA's adoption, the United States racked up trade deficits totaling more than $2 trillion, and it's a much higher number than that. With Canada and Mexico, it lost vast amounts of money and lost 4.1 million manufacturing jobs and 1 in 4 auto jobs. It lost about 25% of our auto jobs, even more than that. Throughout the campaign, I promised to renegotiate NAFTA, and today we have kept that promise. But for 25 years as a civilian, as a businessman, I used to say, how could anybody have signed a deal like NAFTA? And I watched New England and so many other places where I was, just the factories were leaving, the jobs were leaving, people were being fired, and we can't have that. So we have negotiated this new agreement based on the principle of fairness and reciprocity. To me, it's the most important word in trade because we've been treated so unfairly by so many nations all over the world, and we're changing that. We just signed a much better deal with South Korea. We had a horrible, horrible deal, and we just signed that at United Nations, and that's worked out well, and they're happy, we're happy. It's good for jobs, good for a lot of things. When that deal was signed, they said 250,000 jobs will be given by signing this transaction, and they were right. I've said it before. They were right. 250,000 jobs to South Korea, not to the United States. So that's changed, and very much for the better, and this one is a brand new deal. The agreement will govern nearly $1.2 trillion in trade, which makes it the biggest trade deal in the United States history. I want to congratulate U.S. Trade Representative Bob Lighthizer, who has worked. Nobody understands how hard he's worked. No matter when you called him, he was in the office, or he was in somebody else's office doing the same thing. Bob Lighthizer is great. I've heard it for years. I said, if I ever do this, I want to get Lighthizer to represent us, because he felt the way I did. And the entire team at the USTR standing behind me, and some right here in the audience. I want to thank you all. Fantastic job. Peter Navarro, everybody. Thank you all. Thank you. Fantastic group of people. They love our country. I also want to thank Secretary Mnuchin, Secretary Ross, Secretary Nielsen, Secretary Perdue, Jared Kushner, Peter Navarro, and the United States Ambassador to Canada, Kelly Craft. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you very much. I also want to thank President Peña Nieto of Mexico, who we had a few disagreements, but I really like him a lot. I think he may like me, I'm not sure. But I think he's a terrific person, and he'll be leaving soon, but he's really done a good job and wonderful, wonderful person. And the Mexican president-elect, Lopez Obrador, who has given his support to this agreement, and we're developing a really good relationship, which I think is very important for our country, frankly, and for Mexico. And so they worked together on this. This was done by both. I said, look, I don't want to sign an agreement, and then a new president comes in. They don't like it, and we have difficulty. They worked very much together on it, and I appreciate it from both. I have to certainly give my highest regards to Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. A lot of stories came out about Justin and I having difficulty together, and we did over the trade deal. But I'll tell you, it's turned out to be a very, very good deal for both, and a very, very good deal for all three. It puts us in a position that we've never been in before. It's very good when you look at the world and what the world is doing, and when you look at the unfair trade practices that countries are using against the United States. This is a terrific deal for all of us. Once approved by Congress, this new deal will be the most modern, up-to-date, and balanced trade agreement in the history of our country, with the most advanced protections for workers ever developed. If you look at the reviews, people that would normally not, under any circumstances, say good things, because automatically they have to say bad. Even some Democrats say that's amazing. We had some, they haven't been given the sound bites yet, I guess, Mike. But actually you had some Democrats say this is really amazing if he really got all of that. But by tomorrow, I would suspect they'll change their tune. But that's okay, because people know how good it is. It's an amazing deal for a lot of people. Likewise, it will be the most advanced trade deal in the world, with ambitious provisions on the digital economy, patents, very important, financial services, and other areas where the United States has a strong competitive advantage. Mexico and Canada have agreed to strong new labor protections, environmental protections, and new protections for intellectual property. So important. This new deal is an especially great victory for our farmers. Our farmers have gone through a lot over the last 15 years. They've been taken advantage of by everybody. Prices have gone way down. And we're working on some other deals that are going to make them very happy also. But this is a very, very big deal for our farmers. Mexico and Canada will be opened up a lot more than they are now. And I think there'll be a better spirit between the three countries, which is important for our farmers. The agreement will give our farmers and ranchers far greater access to sell American-grown produce in Mexico and in Canada. The deal includes a substantial increase in our farmers' opportunities to export American wheat, poultry, eggs, and dairy, including milk, butter, cheese, yogurt, and ice cream, to name a few. I want to be very specific. I want to be very specific, right? And many other products, but those products were not really being treated fairly as far as those that worked so hard to produce them, and now they're going to be treated fairly. These measures will support many hundreds of thousands of American jobs. This is also a historic win for American manufacturers and American auto workers who have been treated so badly. We've lost so many jobs over the years under NAFTA. Under the current New Deal, and if you look at the current NAFTA deal, the New Deal is taking care of all of these problems because NAFTA, foreign companies have been allowed to manufacture many of their parts overseas ship them to Mexico and Canada for assembly, and send their foreign-made cars into the United States with no tax. So we let all our people go. We fire everybody. They make cars. They make products. They make everything in another country. They send them into the United States, no tax. And the cost is very little different. Sometimes it's more for those people that like to talk about cost. With this agreement, we are closing all of these terrible loopholes. They're closed. They're gone. They were a disaster. For example, we are requiring a large portion of every car to be made by high-wage workers, which will greatly reduce foreign outsourcing, which was a tremendous problem, and means more auto parts and automobiles will be manufactured inside the United States. We will be manufacturing many more cars. And our companies won't be leaving the United States, firing their workers and building their cars elsewhere. There's no longer that incentive. Before, under the NAFTA deal, they had that incentive. They have the opposite incentive now. We're not going to be losing our companies. That was, to me, the most important thing. I don't want to see our companies leave and fire our workers, and our workers never get jobs to replace those jobs. Those days are over. This deal will also impose new standards requiring at least 75% of every automobile to be made in North America in order to qualify for the privilege of free access to our markets. And that's what it is. It's a privilege. We don't take it as a privilege. We don't take it as a privilege. It's a privilege for them to do business with us. And I'm not talking about Mexico. I'm talking about everybody. Everybody. It's a privilege for China to do business with us. It's a privilege for the European Union, who has treated us very badly, but that's coming along, to do business with us. Japan, every country. It's a privilege for them to come in and attack the piggy bank. In this, we will have a result of much more happening right here in the United States. It means, more than anything else, far more American jobs, and these are high-quality jobs. There are also strong provisions to enforce what's called the rules of origin requirements. This will incentivize billions of dollars in new purchases of U.S.-made automobiles. Once approved, this will be a new dawn for the American auto industry and for the American auto worker. They will see. They understand. They voted for us in large numbers, even though their leadership always goes Democrat. A couple of them said to me, I don't know how I can do it again. Many of them, the leaders would back Democrats and would tell me, you're going to get most of the votes from union workers. And we got most of the votes from workers, period. But the American auto worker was very much behind what we were doing as one primary aspect. It will transform North America back into a manufacturing powerhouse. If you remember, the previous administration said, we're not going to have manufacturing jobs anymore, essentially. We're not going to make things anymore? No, just the opposite. Going to be a manufacturing powerhouse and allow us to reclaim a supply chain that has been offshored to the world because of unfair trade issues. We also provide brand new intellectual property protections for biologic drugs, which will make North America a haven for medical innovation and development. We want our drugs to be made here. When you talk prescription drugs, we don't like getting them from foreign countries. We don't know what's happening with those drugs, how they're being made. Too important. This landmark agreement will send cash and jobs pouring into the United States and into North America. Good for Canada, good for Mexico. Instead of jobs leaving for overseas, they will be returning back home, and we've already had it. We have many, many car companies. I was with Prime Minister Abe of Japan. He said, we have sent many car companies to the United States over the last year and a half. It's true, and big expansions. And very importantly, he said many more are coming because they have an incentive now to be here. People want to be back in the United States again. As I say, the United States is respected again, but it's also respected as to trade and industry. This is a truly extraordinary agreement for the United States, Canada, and Mexico. President Peña, it's so important that the president and I have developed this sort of a bond on trade. Peña Nieto, a man that has done a very good job for Mexico in terms of trade, and Prime Minister Trudeau, who I just spoke to both of them a little while ago. They love their countries. They want to do right for their countries, and that's what they've done. And we've really formed, if you look at this agreement, we formed a great partnership with Mexico and with Canada. And I plan to sign the agreement by the end of November. I then will submit it for approval to Congress, where in theory there should be no trouble, but anything you submit to Congress is trouble, no matter what. It's the single greatest agreement ever signed. They'll say, well, you know, Trump likes it, therefore we're not going to approve it, because that would be good for the Republicans, so therefore we can't approve it. But it will be sent to Congress pursuant to the Trade Promotion Authority Act. This agreement follows on the heels of our successful completion of a new and balanced trade deal with South Korea. Tremendous difference in that deal from what it was. It was a disaster, as I said. To improve the old deal that had killed so many jobs. It also follows on our announcement last week of a new trade negotiation with Japan. Japan would never negotiate with the United States. They said, we're not going to negotiate. They told the previous administration, we're not going to negotiate. I said, you don't have to negotiate, but we're going to put a very, very substantial tax on your car if you don't. By the way, without tariffs, we wouldn't be talking about a deal. Just for those babies out there that keep talking about tariffs. That includes Congress. Oh, please don't charge tariffs. Without tariffs, we wouldn't be standing here. I can tell you Bob and all of these folks would not be standing here right now. And we're totally prepared to do that if they don't negotiate. But Japan is wanting to negotiate. Actually, they called about 3 weeks ago, and he's a terrific man, just had a tremendous victory. And they said, we'd like to start negotiations immediately. India, which is the tariff king, they called us and they say, we want to start negotiations immediately. When Bob Lighthizer said, what happened? You would never do this. They said, no, we want to keep your president happy. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? It's true. They have to keep us happy because they understand that we're wise to what's been happening. India charges tariffs of 100%. And then if we want to put a tariff of 25% on, people will call from Congress. But that's not free trade. And I'd look back to people and say, where do these people come from? Where do they come from? So because of the power of tariffs and the power that we have with tariffs, we, in many cases, won't even have to use them. That's how powerful they are and how good they are. But in many cases, we're not going to have to use them. And in many cases, countries that are charging massive tariffs are eliminating those tariffs. As you know, we have $250 billion at 25% interest with China right now, and we could go $267 billion more. And China wants to talk very badly. And I said, frankly, it's too early to talk. Can't talk now because they're not ready, because they've been ripping us for so many years. It doesn't happen that quickly. And if politically people force it too quickly, you're not going to make the right deal for our workers and for our country. But China wants to talk, and we want to talk to them. And we want them to help us with North Korea. We want them to continue to help us with North Korea. That's very important. The European Union, it's been very tough on the United States. Last year and for many years, they've lost in the vicinity of $150 billion a year. They have massive trade barriers. And they didn't want to come. They didn't want to talk. Jean-Claude, great business person, head of the European Union. Jean-Claude, my friend. I'd say, Jean-Claude, we want to make a deal. He goes, no, we are very happy. I said, you may be happy, but I'm not happy because we have one of the worst deals of any group. We have one of the worst deals with the European Union. And they just didn't want to come because they were happy with the deal. I said, but we're not happy with the deal. And finally, after going through a whole process, I said, look, we're just going to put a tax of 20% on all of the millions of Mercedes and BMWs. all of the cars, the millions and millions of cars that they sell here that they won't take over there. Farm product that they won't take over there because there are barriers. You can't sell. You're not allowed to. Our farmers aren't allowed to sell over there many of their products, much of their products, most of them. And so I announced that we're going to put a 20% tariff, could be 25, on their cars coming in. And they immediately called and said, we'd like to start negotiations. And we're having a successful negotiation. We'll see what happens. Who knows? I always say, who knows? But we'll see. I have a feeling we'll be successful. A pillar of national security is economic security and trade. National security is not where we lose hundreds of billions of dollars a year. Over the last 5 years, we've averaged $800 billion a year loss on trade. How dumb is that? $800 billion. This group doesn't know about those numbers. I don't even want them to hear those numbers. But the United States in its trade deals has lost, on average, almost $800 billion a year. That's dealing with China, dealing with European Union, with everybody. Japan, Mexico, Canada, everybody. And we're not going to allow that to happen. But we have to have a strong manufacturing base and manufacturing sector. We need a thriving economy. Those are all really essential ingredients to national security. We can't allow what's been happening over the last 25 years to happen. We're building our military like never before. It will be the strongest it ever was. And all of those jets that are made, and rockets and missiles and ships, they're all being made in the United States, jobs. Our economy is booming like never before. Jobless claims are at a 50-year low. The stock market is at an all-time high. Think of that. Over 50% since my election. 50%. People, the 401ks, and they have 401ks, and they were dying with them for years. Now they're so happy. I was telling the story I often tell of a policeman in New York came up. His wife was always very upset with him as an investor because he wasn't doing well with the 401ks. Now she thinks he's a genius because the numbers are so crazy. But we're up over 50% since the election. And you've heard me say this many times, but African American unemployment, Asian unemployment, Hispanic unemployment is at record lows in history. Not, for the last 2 years. The history of our country, African American, Asian, Hispanic, young people without high school diplomas, all at historic, that's a very important sector, all at historic lows. The lowest in history. It's really something that's great. This is helping so much with people that get out of prison. We have a tremendous problem. People come out of prison, they can't get a job. Employers don't want to hire them. The economy is so good, they're hiring them, and they're turning out to be incredible workers. They're given a chance. They're really given a second, given a third chance in some cases. But I've had numerous employers come up and say, I'll tell you what, I've taken people that were in prison, and we've hired them. He wouldn't have done this in a normal economy or a bad economy, only in this kind of an economy. And now he's like the biggest fan. One man in particular has taken numerous people. He said most of them have been unbelievable. All you can ask is most. But most of them have been unbelievable. That's a great thing. That's a really great thing. It gives them a chance. So before we take questions, I want to extend our warmest condolences to the country of Indonesia. Friend of mine, we're going to be calling up the leader, who is a great leader indeed, but they got hit by a giant tsunami like people have not seen. This part of the world hasn't seen it so much, fortunately. They say that's the worst of all. You look at the tornadoes, the hurricanes, you look at all of the different natural disasters. A friend of mine who studies natural disasters, I don't know why he does that, but he does. He says that tsunami is the worst of all, and they got hit very hard, and probably thousands of people killed. We have already sent a lot of first responders and military and others to help. But it's a really bad situation. And finally, before closing, I want to send our thoughts and prayers to the victims of the Las Vegas shooting. That was a horrible, horrible time in the life of our country. Took place exactly 1 year ago today. All of America is grieving for the lives lost and for the families they left behind. So to all of those families and to the people of Las Vegas, we love you. We are with you. We're working with you very hard. That was a terrible, terrible event. So thank you very much for that. I want to ask Bob Lighthizer, who is just a terrific individual as well as a man that knows a lot about this subject, to come up and say a word about the USMCA, the new agreement. And if you have any questions, we'll take some questions after that. Please, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I start, I would just like to give a vignette because I think it says something about working for the president. So August 16th of last year, we started this process. And I'm at a hotel in Washington, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people waiting to have the introduction of myself and my two counterparts, one from Canada, one from the United States. And we're lined up, and I get a call that says the president wants to talk to you. So I go into the little anteroom, and I get on the cell phone. The president starts talking, and everybody's kind of waiting, and he's talking, and he's going through what he wants to get done in NAFTA and his problems with it, all of which he's quite familiar with. And then he finally says two things which I thought were telling. One, he said, "Bob, I will back you up like no other USTR has been backed up in history." And then the second thing, and he did that, by the way, and then the second thing he said, "Now go out there and have fun." And I thought, well, it's probably not going to be as much fun from my side as it will be from your side. But I'm proud to be on your team, and I really am proud to follow you through this and the other trade changes. As you have said, Mr. President, this agreement is historic in many ways. The USMCA will cover $1.2 trillion, easily making it the biggest agreement in history. We have done this in 14 months. And believe me, in trade negotiating terms, that's like warp speed. When we began these negotiations last year, the President's instructions to me were precise and straightforward. Protect American workers, fight for our farmers and ranchers, preserve America's competitive innovation edge, secure greater access for our businesses, and above all, bring back jobs to America. I think we have succeeded with this agreement. The USMCA will accelerate the manufacturing renaissance our country has enjoyed under President Trump. It will bring our trading relationship with Mexico and Canada into the 21st century, and it will protect America's competitive edge in digital and innovation across the economy. The new agreement will also serve as a template for our trade agreements under the Trump administration in the future. This paradigm-shifting model rests on three pillars. The first pillar is fairness. We have negotiated stronger rules of origin for automobiles, which will bring billions of dollars of manufacturing back to America. We have secured greater market access for our farmers and ranchers. We've agreed to unprecedented labor standards that will help level the playing field for our workers. We've also agreed to a first-of-its-kind review and termination provision, which will ensure that the USMCA, unlike NAFTA, will not become unbalanced and out of date. The second pillar will consist of a host of ambitious provisions on digital trade, intellectual property, services, including financial services, designed to protect our competitive edge. The third pillar consists of new provisions designed to eliminate unfair trade practices, including strong new disciplines on state-owned enterprises, on currency manipulation, relations with non-market economies, and much, much more. We wouldn't be here today if it were not for several people who contributed so much to this endeavor. First, the President's key advisor and my good friend, Jared Kushner, was my partner in leading the U.S. negotiating team. I've said before, and I'll say again, this agreement would not have happened if it wasn't for Jared. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank my counterparts, Secretary Guajardo and Minister Freeland, as well as other Mexican and Canadian government officials, including Secretary Vidagrey, Ambassador Seade, Jerry Butts, and Katie Telford of Canada, and so many more. I'd also like to thank the wonderful staff at USTR, many of whom are on here. I like to think of us a little bit like we were the Marine Corps, and so I like the name particularly of this agreement. USTR is about 250 people, and they're all devoted, and they're all exceptional, and they all work round the clock. Many of the people you're looking at spent more than one night in the office over the course of the last few weeks. And they have enormous ability, and this president has unleashed them. Finally, I would like to thank President Trump. Your leadership, vision, and grit made this agreement possible. No other person could have done it. Millions of Americans will benefit for years to come because of this vision and probably even more important, this grit. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bob. Thank you very much. Some questions? Yes, Steve? Question?
Thank you, sir. You've had tensions with Prime Minister Trudeau.
Yes.
How did that affect your ability to get this deal done?
I don't think it did. He's a professional. I'm a professional. We had very strong tensions. It was just an unfair deal, whether it was Mexico or Canada, and now it's a fair deal for everybody. It's a much different deal. It's a brand new deal. It's not NAFTA redone. It's a brand new deal. I just spoke with him. We have a great relationship, and we're going to work as a partner. Don't forget, the rest of the world is looking to take advantage of us, and as a region, you might say. And we're going to work very closely together with Canada and with Mexico because we'll be able to compete with anybody. We have things that nobody else has. We have energy that nobody else has. We have timber that nobody else has. We have things that no other part of the world has to the extent that we have. So we're going to do very well together. I think we have. There was a lot of tension, I will say, between he and I think more specifically, and it's all worked out. You know when it ended? About 12 o'clock last night.
And you mentioned the...
But he's a good man. He's done a good job, and he loves the people of Canada.
You mentioned the $267 billion in possible more tariffs on China. What does China need to do to avoid that?
Well, we'll see what happens with China. We have lost $375 billion in trade deficits. They have a surplus of $375 billion with a B with the United States. And it's been that way for years and years and years. I always say we rebuilt China. They took that money and they built fighter jets and they built bridges. They built more bridges than we built in the last 100 years probably, big ones, like the George Washington Bridge, like big bridges. And I'm not going to take, look, I don't blame China. I blame our leadership. They should have never let that happen. And I told that to President Xi. I said, I was making a speech in China, and I was really hitting China hard. And I'm in China. I don't know if that's a good thing to do. But I looked at it and I said, but I don't really blame you. I blame our leadership for allowing this to happen. He knew exactly what I meant. We had no deal with China. I asked one of the top people in China, a representative at the highest level, came to the Oval Office. I said, let me ask you, how did this ever happen? He's a pro, so he understands. He doesn't have to be cute. He said, nobody ever did anything from the United States. When we put on a 25% tariff on every car that comes from the United States into China, we thought we would be rebuked. We thought it would be terrible. Nobody ever called. Nobody did anything. That was years ago. And we charged them nothing, 2.5%, but we don't collect it. We do now, by the way, but we don't collect the 2.5%. So they charge 25%. We charge essentially nothing. But I said, how did it happen? He said, nobody ever called. We don't have a deal with China. There's no deal. They do whatever they want. So we have a tremendous problem with theft of intellectual property with China. We have a lot of other problems with China. We have primarily trade problems. And as you know, they're having a much more difficult time now. I don't want them to have a difficult time. And we're doing better than we've ever done. Everybody talked about the tariffs. Oh, the tariffs, tariffs. You know, tariffs ended in 1913. And they then went to a different system in 1918, totally unrelated. And then in 1928, you had the Great Depression for a lot of different reasons, not necessarily our country's fault, but a little bit our country's fault. And then in the 1930s, they said, we better start charging some tariffs. We need money to come into our country again. Okay? So I'm not advocating tariffs. I will tell you this, our steel industry, Wilbur, is stronger than it's been in 25 years. This has taken 6 months because I charged for the dumpers. They were dumping steel and dumping aluminum into our country. I charged 25%. That's a lot. Could be more, but that's a lot. And if you look at U.S. Steel and Nucor just announced $1 billion plant, brand new, already started construction. U.S. Steel's building 8 or 9 plants. They're expanding plants. I don't think there's any industry like what's happened to steel in the last 9 months, 10 months since I really started doing what I'm doing. It's been really pretty amazing. Aluminum also. So, and we need steel. We need steel for defense. What are we going to do? Go and say, oh, we'll get our steel from like another country? We can't do that. Excuse me. We can't do that. So we need steel, and we need it badly for defense. So I'm very proud of what's happened with the steel industry. Okay, question? Yeah, go ahead. Sure. She's shocked that I picked her.
No.
She's like in a state of shock.
I'm not thinking, Mr.
That's
President.
okay. I know you're not thinking. You never do.
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
In a tweet this weekend, Mr. President, you said that it's incorrect to say you're limiting the scope of the FBI investigation.
What does that have to do with trade? I don't mind answering the question, but, you know, I'd like to do the trade
It has
questions.
to do with the other
later.
headline in the news, which is the Kavanaugh
I know,
nomination.
but how about talking about trade, and then we'll get to that. We'll do that a little bit later.
Do you think the trade,
Anybody have a trade?
Do you
Go
think
ahead,
your trade
please.
deal will pass through Congress, sir?
I think so, but, you know, if it doesn't, we have lots of other alternatives. But I do think so. I think if they're fair, which is a big question, but if it's fair on both sides, the Republicans love it. Industry loves it. Our country loves it. If it's fair, it will pass. I think it'll pass easily, really easily, because it's a great deal. I mean, NAFTA passed. It's one of the worst deals I've ever seen. Inconceivable that it was made. Fair question. Any other questions on
Thank
trade?
you.
I'll get back to you on the other question.
I'd like to go forward with my Kavanaugh question.
Let's
if I
do
might,
that
within a
later,
minute.
but I'll call you a
quick-
second time. Go ahead, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. You have described India right now as a tariff king. Can you explain it a bit later?
Well, India charges us tremendous tariffs. When we send Harley Davidsons, motorcycles, other things to India, they charge very, very high tariffs. And I've spoken to Prime Minister Modi, and he's going to reduce them very substantially. Nobody ever spoke to these people. He said, nobody ever spoke to me. In other words, we've had leaders here. I'm not, you know, trying to be overly dramatic. We've had presidents of the United States and trade representatives. They never spoke to India. Brazil's another one. That's a beauty. They charge us whatever they want.
So
If you ask some of the companies, they say Brazil is among the toughest in the world, maybe the toughest in the world. We don't call them and say, hey, you're treating our companies unfairly. You're treating our country unfairly. So India is a very, very high, they really charge tremendously high tariffs. On motorcycles, it was 100%. So you send a motorcycle into India, there's a 100% tariff. Now that's so high that it's like a barrier. In other words, who's going to buy it? Costs you so much. Now they've already reduced that substantially, but it's still too high. My relationship with India is great, with Prime Minister Modi is great, and they're going to start doing a lot. They've called us to make a deal. We didn't even call them. They called us to make a deal, which is like shocking to people. Yes, sir, go ahead. Yes.
Well, I don't. There we go. I do have a second question on the Kavanaugh thing. When you get back to it, if you take that,
Let's go.
But you'll take that now.
No.
Okay. Well, the question I
First
have
do trade.
on trade, does this mean the end of tariffs, if you could spell that out
No.
to Canada?
No.
So do you think it'll pass?
No. The steel is staying where it is, and aluminum. But it means we probably, for the most part, won't be having to use tariffs unless we're unable to make a deal with a country. For instance, if we can't make a deal with the European Union, we will respectfully put tariffs on the cars. The United States will take in billions and billions of dollars into its coffers. Isn't that nice? Because you don't hear that.
Only from Carl Sagan.
Okay, yes, Sagan. But it'll take in billions and billions of dollars. But really what's going to happen is they'll make the cars in the United States. This way they don't have to pay the 25 or the 20% tax.
And could you spell
So
out?
I don't think you're going to have to use the tariffs too often, but there will be cases where you have countries that are just absolutely not willing to do what's fair and reciprocal, and in that case they'll pay tariffs. And you know what? The United States will do very well. Either way, we do very well.
So do you think it'll pass in Canada, Mexico, and more importantly,
I don't know.
here in the United States?
I can't tell you. All I know is we made a deal. The highly respected presidents, and in the case of Canada, the Prime Minister, are satisfied with the deal. It's good for Canada, good for Mexico. It's good for all three. This is a deal. I'm not touting it. This is good for all three. That's good. And just that fact makes it good for us. But this is good for all three. But this is a much different deal than NAFTA. And this is much more of a reciprocal deal for the United States, which is really good. Yeah, go ahead, Peter. No, why don't you just, we'll do the Kavanaugh questions. I mean, you talk about being treated harshly. We'll do that in a couple of, let's finish up trade because you have a lot of people that want to run over to the Wall Street Journal and start writing. Go ahead, please. I can't hear you. A Mexican journalist? Go ahead.
Yes.
Sure.
So you're going to keep the tariffs on steel and aluminum on Mexico and Canada?
Until such time as we can do something that would be different, like quotas, perhaps, so that our industry is protected. We are not going to allow our steel industry to disappear. It was almost gone. I'll tell you what, if our country kept going the way it was going, within 2 years you wouldn't have had a steel industry. We have to have a steel industry. We have to have an aluminum. You know, there are certain industries important. So we are working on that now. That wasn't part of this. But we will do something. And in fact, Bob, if you want, you may want to say a couple of words about that because we were literally talking about that 1 hour ago.
Yes, great. Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I would say, first of all, there are two separate things as far as we're concerned. We know that there are grave interests to both countries. We are engaging in talks now with an effort to try to preserve the effect of our program and still take care of their needs. And hopefully we'll be able to work that out. But we are in communication with them.
And really take care of the needs of our steel companies. I don't want plants closing. They're hiring thousands of workers all over the country. I'm not giving that up.
But you get the assurances of President-elect Lopez Obrador that he's going to keep his word on this trade.
Oh yeah, we have a very good understanding. Yeah, really good. Yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
I am, Mr. President. Just hoping you can just reiterate on the tariffs. What specifically would it take for Canada or Mexico to be exempt from these tariffs? And secondly, did you consider dairy the deal breaker when it came to Canada?
Dairy was a deal breaker. And now for our farmers, it's, as you know, substantially opened up, much more. And I know they can't open it completely. They have farmers also. You know, they can't be overrun. And I fully and I tell them that. I say, look, I understand you have limits, but they could do much better. And we've opened it up to our farmers. So the folks up in Wisconsin, I'll tell you what, I went to Wisconsin, I went to Iowa. Joni knows better than anybody, right? And Scott Walker, who I think is a fantastic governor, talks about it all the time, that our farmers were not treated properly by Canada. Now they're going to be treated with respect. They're going to be treated fairly. Or, as I say, in that reciprocal way. Very important. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. President. It seems there was some give and take on both sides for this deal. I wonder what, in your view, would be your biggest concession to Canada and why you decided to make that concession. Number two, if you could dive in a bit more to your thoughts on Justin Trudeau. You talk about tensions. I wonder what you, throughout this process, what you've learned about him and what the state of the relationship is with him today and going forward.
Well, I think my biggest concession would be making the deal. because we are the one that people come and want to take from. I'm talking about every country. And that gives us a tremendous advantage in negotiating that we never used before with past administration. We never used it. Every deal we have is a loser. Every deal. You could look at almost every country in the world, almost every country. We have trade deficits. We lose with everybody. So I think my biggest concession was making the deal, because we could have done it a different way. But it would have been nasty and it wouldn't have been nice, and I don't want to have that. We have a great relationship with Canada. I think now it'll be better than ever. The only problem with Justin is he loves his people, and he's, fighting hard for his people. I think we've always had actually a very good relationship. It got a little bit testy in the last couple of months, but that was over this agreement, and I understand that. But no, I think Justin's a good person who's doing a good job. He felt very committed to his people, and that's what he did. And again, this is good for everybody. This is good for Canada, good for Mexico also. Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you mentioned, you're going to be signing this agreement, and your counterparts are going to be signing this agreement within the next 60 days. Right. Then it's up to Congress.
Right.
You're very confident. I get that. You're a confident guy.
Not at all confident. I'm not.
Well,
I don't know.
explain to me
Congress,
why you think that
tell me
if Congress
you guys
is
going to
controlled
sign
by,
it, tell me. I think they will.
If Congress is controlled by Democrats,
could happen. Could be.
It could happen.
So they're willing to throw.
What are the prospects?
Yeah, they might be willing to throw one of the great deals for people. And the workers, they may be willing to do that for political, people or political purposes, because frankly, they'll have 2020 in mind. So far, I dream about 2020 when I look at what's going. They have 2020 in mind. They want to do as well as they can, and so trying to reject even great deals, like this is a great deal for our country, great for other countries, but it's a great deal for our country and great for our worker. I can't tell you whether or not they will obstruct, whether or not they will resist. I mean, their whole campaign is resist. I see their signs all resist. They don't even know what they're resisting. If you ask them, what are you resisting? Well, let me think about that. They can't ask. They had somebody on this weekend. They said, what are you resisting? And they were unable to answer the question. So, I can't tell you about delay, obstruct, resist, because, right after this election, and I think we're going to do well, although history is not on our side. I guess in history, generally whoever has the White House doesn't do well in midterms. But the one difference is we have the greatest economy in the history of our country. I think that's a big difference. And that's one of our problems, too, because people that went out and voted for me, and they would be voting for me if I was on the ticket, but I'm not on the ticket. But Congress is on the ticket. And I try and tell my people that's the same thing as me. In a sense, that's the same thing. Think of it as the same thing as me. But I think we're going to do well. I actually think. I mean, we have Senate races that weren't even in play 6 months ago. When I started looking at it closely, I won't mention names, but there were senators that were not in play. They were not even, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, numerous of them. They were not in play. In other words, let's not go here, let's not go to this state, 4 or 5 states. Now they're like even races. In one case, they're up 2 points. Now, who knows what that means? And, as you know, there are a lot of them are repression polls or polls that aren't very accurate, because I see polls that I know are false having to do with certain of the races. But we had areas and we had congressional seats, too, where I know it's going to be a positive outcome. But you look at what's going on, and it doesn't seem to be broadcast that way. But I certainly had that with my election. They were telling me I was, in trouble in certain states, that I end up winning in a landslide. And I knew I was going to win them in a landslide, but they wouldn't report it that way. You know why? Fake news. Okay. Right
One last
behind
thing, Mr.
you. Yes,
President.
right behind you.
Do you believe that the trade agreement will be a major issue in the midterm elections?
Well, it shouldn't be. Look, it's a good agreement. These people, when I first did it, they said, why don't you just extend NAFTA? They have no idea about business. Just extend NAFTA. That would have been a disaster. We're losing $100 billion a year in deficits, at least to Mexico, under NAFTA. But just look at the results, and a substantial amount to Canada, although a lot of people try and say it's pretty much even. It's not even. We lose a substantial amount. So, I think it's a very hard thing to defend, but that's all right. Look, I understand the world of politics, I think, as well as anybody. I haven't been doing it that long, but I actually have been, because I've been doing it on the other side. And I do understand. And, you know, they can take the greatest thing ever done and try and make it sound as bad as possible. But this one's tough. This one, people are coming out for this one and saying, that's incredible what we've been able to do. Yes, behind you, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now that you've answered several questions on trade, I'd like to turn
don't
to
do
Judge
that.
Kavanaugh.
Do you have,
President,
excuse me, do you have a question on trade? We'll do one or two more questions on trade.
You answered several questions
okay,
on
don't
trade.
do that. That's not nice.
Mr. President,
and besides that, somebody is before you. Excuse me, don't do that. Do you have a question on trade?
You answered several questions.
Do you have
on
a
trade.
question on trade?
My question is on Judge
Okay,
Kavanaugh.
please, yes,
You said
please.
the FBI should interview whoever that they believe is appropriate. Does that include Julie Swetnick, the third accuser? And can you promise to release the full findings
give me
from
your
the
question,
FBI
please.
after they finish their report, Mr. President?
Give me your question, please. Give her the mic, please.
Thank you very much. Was border security or funding
Yes.
for the wall discussed during the negotiation, and who will pay for the wall?
Yes, the wall. We're getting $1.6 billion for the wall this year. We got 1.6. We have about $3.2 billion in the wall. We're doing a lot of work. People don't realize. I don't really want to talk about it because I can build it quickly at one time, which is what I want. But we've been building it over the last year and a half with $3.2 billion, 1.6, and we now have another 1.6. And I've got a big decision to make after the election as to whether or not we go for it. Because you know what? Border security to the people of our country, very important. The wall is a big factor in border security. And I really believe that the people of our country, they want the wall and they want border security. They don't want open borders like the Democrats want to have. They don't want crime pouring into our country. They don't want MS-13 pouring into our country. They don't want that. And I really think I have a very big decision to make sometime right after the election, very quickly, because you know what comes due after the election. Do I want to do it before the election? Personally, yes. But I don't want to do that for a different reason, because I have some very fine people that are running in close races, and it may affect them and it may not. It may be good for them. I happen to think it would be good for them. But border security for our country, our people want security. The women of our country, they want security. They don't want to have thousands of people pouring across the border. And I'll tell you what, they want to have ICE, because ICE walks into MS-13 and these gangs, and they treat them like it's just another day in the office. They're rough and they're tough and they love our country. And I'm treating ICE good and I'm treating our law enforcement good. And the Democrats don't want to take care of our law enforcement. And the Democrats don't want to take care of our military. So we are going to have a decision to make sometime right after, very close to after the election is over. And that will be on border security and the wall, but border security. The wall's a big factor. Okay, do you want to do some questions?
But was that part of the conversation and the negotiation that just
Yes,
took
it
place?
was. Yeah, we talked about it. With Mexico, we talked about it. It was a big part, and certain things and certain understandings are had. At the same time, we don't want to mix it up too much. This is a very big deal and a very good deal for everybody. But border security and security generally is a very big factor. We also have drugs. Sometimes, and some people would say it's a very similar thing. But we talked about drugs with Mexico. That's a very, very big factor. Very, very big. We have a lot of good understandings, and we'll be discussing that with them.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, but it was a factor, absolutely, in the deal. Okay, let's go. Come on. You want to, I guess, get off trade. I don't know. People are falling asleep with trade. I think it's, to me, it's the most exciting thing you can talk about, right, Joni? Right? All right, let's go. Come on.
Thank you, Mr. President. In a tweet this weekend, you said it's incorrect to say that you're limiting the scope of the FBI investigation into Judge Kavanaugh. But your own statement on Friday made it very clear. You said this investigation must be limited in scope. So which is it?
Well, no, I didn't say anything on Friday. What I said is let the Senate decide whatever they want to do is okay with me. And also the FBI. I think the FBI should do what they have to do to get to the answer. At the same time, just so we all understand, this is our 7th investigation of a man who has really, you know, you look at his life until this happened, what a change he's gone through, what his family's gone through, the trauma for a man that's never had any accusation, he's never had a bad statement about him. He's led, I think he was #1 in his class at Yale. He was #1 in his law school at Yale. And then what he's gone through over the last 3 weeks is incredible. So I want the FBI, this is now their 7th investigation, so it's not like they're just starting. I want them to do a very comprehensive investigation, whatever that means according to the senators and the Republicans and the Republican majority. I want them to do that. I want it to be comprehensive. I actually think it's a good thing for Judge Kavanaugh. I think it's actually a good thing, not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. Now, with that being said, I'd like it to go quickly. And the reason I'd like it to go quickly, very simple. It's so simple. Because it's unfair to him at this point. What his wife is going through, what his beautiful children are going through is not describable. It's not describable. It's not fair. I think it's fair to do it to me because, I've been going from day one. I've been from long before I got to office. You've been doing it. It's almost became, I think for me, it's like a part of my job description to handle this crap. But as far as this is a man that this is not from his world. And you know what? If they're not going to want him, and I think that would be a shame, I'm with him all the way. I mean, a charge made or said to have occurred 36 years ago, and nothing happened since. And look, I feel badly for all parties. I feel badly for everybody. I feel badly for our country. This is so bad for our country. But I will tell you, I watched those senators on the Democrat side, and I thought it was a disgrace, and partially because I know them. I know them too well. And you know what? They are not angels.
Are you saying your White House has put no limitations on?
No, my White House is doing
FBI
whatever
can
the senators
speak
want. No.
Who they should interview.
You don't understand what I'm saying. You do understand. You just don't want to report it that way. Just so you understand, my White House will do whatever the senators want. I'm open to whatever they want. The one thing I want is speed. Now, they started, I believe, on Friday. Could have even been a little bit earlier than that, but they started. They have worked round the clock on Saturday, Sunday. They're working right now. I mean, they're covering a lot of territory. This is the 7th investigation of Judge Kavanaugh, number 7. This isn't number 1. They started on Friday. They worked all weekend. They've gone late into the evenings. The FBI is really working hard, and they're putting in a lot of hours. So hopefully they can come up with what everybody's looking for. But no, I'm guided by the Senate. I want to make the Senate happy because ultimately they're making the judgment. I'm not making the judgment. I've already made my judgment. The Senate is making a judgment on Judge Kavanaugh. That's a very important thing to do. Yes, go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
Just for clarity, so that it's clear. In fact, it's up to you to instruct the FBI what to do.
It is up to me. It is up to me. But I'm instructing them as per what I feel the Senate wants. The Senate's making this decision, and I'm instructing them as per what the Senate is looking for.
Just for clarity, will you instruct the White House counsel, Don McGahn, to give the FBI free rein to interview whomever they feel is necessary?
Well, I have so instructed him, and I did it again over the weekend because I see the press was, I don't want to use the word in this case, misleading. It's a much more complex subject than anybody would understand and than most people understand. But essentially, I have done that. But I did also say within the bounds of what the Senate wants. We don't want to go on to use an expression often used by me, we don't want to go on a witch hunt, do we?
So just to be clear, should the FBI interview all 3 of Brett Kavanaugh's accusers?
It wouldn't bother me at all. Now, it depends. I don't know all 3 of the accusers.
All 3.
Certainly, I imagine they're going to interview 2. The third one I don't know much about, but it wouldn't bother me at all. I mean, I've been heard that the third one has, I have no idea if this is true, has very little credibility. If there is any credibility, interview the third one. But I want it to be done quickly because it's unfair to the family and to the judge. It's unfair. It's so unfair to his kids and his wife.
How about for the accusers? Has this process been fair to them?
Well, certainly we gave the doctor a tremendous time, which is great. She spoke well, but, there are some questions that haven't been answered, like what year was it? What day was it? Where was it? Do you know the location? Do you know the house? A lot of different things. People are saying, well, what's going on? With all of that, you cannot say that we've done anything but be respectful. And I do, and I respect her position very much. I believe, and again, this is Republican senators and this is the Senate, I believe they've been very respectful to the doctor, Dr. Ford.
Isn't that why the FBI should interview all of them to exonerate Brett Kavanaugh?
Yeah, Peter, I think the FBI should interview anybody that they want within reason. But you have to say within reason. They should interview, but they should also be guided, and I'm being guided, by what the senators are looking for, because they have to make the choice. Go ahead, now you can go.
Should Brett Kavanaugh be interviewed by the FBI?
I think so. I think it's fine if they do. I don't know. That's up to them. I think that he spoke very conclusively and very well. I think it's been a very rough period of time. I guarantee he's never had a period of time like this. When he was chosen, everybody said, oh, this is going to go so quickly. Look, people thought 10 years ago that Brett Kavanaugh was going to be a Supreme Court justice because of his intellect, because of his career, because of the fact that there are no games. Now they talk about alcohol. They talk about all of the things that you hear. And frankly, you take a look at, they're bringing up subjects. We would know about this over the last 20 years, 30 years of his career. What happened? They're going back to high school, and they're saying he drank a lot one evening in high school. I tell you what, I happen to know some United States senators. One who is on the other side, who's pretty aggressive. I've seen that person in very bad situations. Okay? I've seen that person in very, very bad situations, somewhat compromising. And I think it's very unfair to bring up things like this. However, whatever the senators want is okay with me. They're going to be making a decision. Whatever they want is okay with me. Go ahead. That's enough, Peter. Go, please. Say it.
You said this crap when you referred to I've been dealing with this crap for years. What did you mean?
Oh, I think the press has treated me unbelievably unfairly. In fact, when I won, I said, the good thing is now the press finally gets it. Now they'll finally treat me fairly. They got worse. They're worse now than ever. They're loco, but that's okay. I put up with it. Go ahead. I use that word because of the fact that we made a deal with Mexico. So, no, please sit down.
Thank you, Mr. President, for coming back to me.
You're going to be next. You're going to be next.
I didn't know. I thought you were talking.
Go ahead.
I have two questions about Judge Kavanaugh. First, there are now concerns that he may have lied or mischaracterized his drinking while testifying. If they find that he did, do you think that bars him from being your Supreme Court nominee?
Well, I watched him. I was surprised at how vocal he was about the fact that he likes beer, and he's had a little bit of difficulty. I mean, he talked about things that happened when he drank. I mean, this is not a man that said that alcohol was that he was perfect with respect to alcohol. No, I thought he was actually, going back so many years, I thought he was excellent. The interesting thing is, though, nobody asked him about what's happened in the last 25, 30 years during his professional career, because there were no bad reports. I mean, there are bad reports on everybody in here. Most of the people sitting down there are bad, except for Mike Pence, by the way. And if we find one on him, then I think that'll be the greatest shock of all time. No, there are bad reports on everybody. I'm looking at people. Look at some of these people asking the questions, okay? Look at Blumenthal. He lied about Vietnam. He didn't just say, hey, I went to Vietnam. No. For 15 years, he said he was a war hero. He fought in Da Nang province. We call him Da Nang Richard. Da Nang, that's his nickname, Da Nang. He never went to Vietnam. And he's up there saying, we need honesty and we need integrity. This guy lied when he was the Attorney General of Connecticut. He lied. I don't mean a little bit. And then when he got out, he actually dropped out of the race and he won anyway, because Democrats always win in Connecticut. He won very close, probably the closest ever. But here's a guy lied, and now he's up there talking like he's holier than thou. You know what? Take a look at his record. And when he got out, and when he apologized, he was crying. The tears were all over the place. And now he acts like, how dare you? Take a look at the judge who has led an exemplary life. I mean, you're going back to high school because he had beer? I think the judge has been pretty amazing about describing his situation with alcohol and with beer. I mean, take a look at Cory Booker. He ran Newark, New Jersey into the ground. He was a horrible mayor. And he made statements that when he was in high school or college, what he was doing, he actually made the statements. And now he's talking about Judge Kavanaugh. And I could go through a whole list of them, okay? Look at Dianne Feinstein. You're telling me about time. Dianne Feinstein knew about this 2 months earlier. If she wanted a really thorough investigation, we had all the time in the world. She didn't have to wait till after the hearing was closed, essentially. She should have said, listen, I have a problem. I have this report. I'd like the FBI to look at it while we're doing the hearings. We had 2 months. No, she didn't do that. She waited till we were closed. And then she probably leaked it, but, you know, who am I to say? But she probably leaked it based on a very bad body language the other day. But more importantly, in a sense, for her to have waited that period of time, and now for you Democrats, and I guess I'm including you too, the media, right? I consider you a part of the Democrat Party. But for you, for the Democrats, to be talking about we want more time for the FBI. If you wanted more time for the FBI, why didn't Dianne Feinstein bring this up? Now, you know that she showed this to other Democrats. She's not the only one. She showed this to other Democrats. There were more than just her that knew about this big confidential thing. It was confidential until the hearing was over. After the hearing was over, they went public. Why didn't they do it during the hearing? And we could have had all the time in the world. You know why? Because they're dishonest people. Okay, yes, please.
You didn't answer my question, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
You didn't answer my question, Mr. President. So if he did lie about his drinking, does that mean you'll pull his
I don't think he did.
Okay.
Look, here's what. I'm just saying, I'm not a drinker. I can honestly say I never had a beer in my life, okay?
Right.
It's one of my only good traits. I don't drink. Whenever they're looking for something good, I say, I never had a glass of alcohol. I've never had alcohol. I've just, you know, for whatever reason. Can you imagine if I had, what a mess I'd be? I'd be the world's worst. But I never drank. I never drank, okay? But I can tell you, I watched that hearing. And I watched a man saying that he did have difficulty as a young man with drink. The one question I didn't ask is, how about the last 20 years? Have you had difficulty the last 20 years? Because nobody said anything bad about him in many, many years. They go back to high school. You know, I graduated from high school, and while I did not drink, I saw a lot of people drinking. They'd drink beer, and they'd go crazy, and, you know, they were in high school. They were 16, 17 years old, and I saw a lot of it. Does that mean that they can't do something that they want to do with their life? So it's a very tough thing. I really believe that he was very strong on the fact that he drank a lot, and so I don't know where there'd be big discrepancy.
Okay, so
yes, go ahead, please.
Just to wrap
please.
up, can you promise
You know
to
what? You've really
release
had
the
enough.
FBI's report?
Hey, you've had enough. Go ahead, please.
Thanks, Mr. President. Judge Kavanaugh said he was being targeted by Democrats. Has he made the process overly political? And how can you assure the American people that he'll be able to deliver impartial decisions?
Well, you'll have to ask him that question, but I can tell you he's been treated horribly.
But
He's
how
a
does
good
that
man.
affect his
He's a good
judicial
man with a great
judgment?
family. I think he's been treated horribly. Lindsey Graham was, I thought, terrific the other day, and he brought up one point that is now being discussed by a lot of people, and that's who is going to want to run for office, be in office, take an appointment of not just Supreme Court, but, you know, many positions. I have right now 360 people that aren't being approved. They're very qualified. Nobody says they're not qualified, but Senator Schumer is not approving them because of resist and obstruct. It's much longer than ever in the history of our country, like I think double the time almost. It's far more people than anybody in the history of our country. Most of those people are routine approvals. These are people that gave up jobs. They gave up their life to come and serve our country. And Schumer and his group won't approve them. They're slow-walking them. Everything is going to 30 hours, meaning they take them out 30 hours. Person that's going to be approved. It's a disgrace. So when the judge brings up whether it's politics or not, I don't know. You'd have to ask him. But I can say this. He's been treated really, really horribly.
But are you concerned
Please, go ahead,
it could
please.
color
I'm not concerned, no. No, you know what I'm concerned? That we get great, great people on the U.S. Supreme Court. That's what I'm concerned. And I want to have great people. And I don't want to have to call people for any court and have them say, sir, it's such a great honor, but no thank you, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. That'd be a sad day for our country. And we're going to come close to that. Because I know people now that say, I don't know how he does it. I don't know why he would have taken it. Nobody knew a thing like this could have happened. When Justice Gorsuch got approved, it was rough, but it was nothing like what they're doing to this man and what they're coming up with. And in many cases, fabricating, because as you know, many stories were pulled back and certain stories were pulled back that were horrible. What they're doing to this man and his family is very, very sad and very bad for our nation. Yes?
Mr. President, you just said some senators are not angels, and you've seen some of them in
I would say some of them, yes.
compromising situations.
Yes.
Could you tell us who and exactly what situation
No,
you've seen
no.
them
I
in?
think I'll save it for a book like everybody else, and I'll write it. Okay? I'm not giving it to you. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. President, if the FBI finds other witnesses who can corroborate the account of any of the accusers, would that be enough for you
I would certainly look at that. I'm open. I'm open. I think he's a fine man. I think he's a great scholar. I so believed him when he said what he did. He focused on being number one at Yale, on being number one in high school, at being number one at law. He focused. I can so understand that. I mean, it's so important. The way he said that, it made an impact on me. He was so focused on being number one at Yale, and I believe he was number one at Yale. But I understood that very well.
And I wanted to ask about something else you brought up today, the Las Vegas shooting.
Yes.
There's some frustration that more hasn't been done in that past year. More hasn't been done about bump stocks. Are there some things you would like to see done?
You're wrong about
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
So in order to terminate bump stocks, we have to go through a procedure. We are now at the final stages of that procedure. In fact, the lawyers were just telling me, and over the next couple of weeks I'll be able to write it out. But you can't just write it out because rules and regulations in this country are really tough, even for something like that. So we're knocking out bump stocks. I've told the NRA, I've told it, bump stocks are gone. But to do it, you have to go to public hearings, which we've had. You have to go through all sorts of regulatory control systems. And we are in the final couple of weeks, and is our attorney around someplace, please? He said we're in the final 2 or 3 weeks, and I'll be able to write out bump stocks. But it's a process that takes, statutorily, it takes about a year to do it.
And any
to
other
do it properly.
Any other actions you're planning to help prevent?
Yeah, and we're working also with Congress on both sides. We are working on a lot of different things. That was a horrible thing, but we're working on both sides of that question. And the bump stock is almost gone. But again, to do it so it's meaningful, the lawyer just said it. Yeah, we've gone through a whole procedure. If you look, in fact, you could call Derek, who you know very well, and he's gone through the full procedure. We've done it absolutely by the book, and in a very short period of time, bump stocks will be ruled out. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Yes. You've had one? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please. Please, sit down.
Mr. President, a final trade question. Since steel and aluminum tariffs won't be coming down from Canada and Mexico, can you talk about whether there was discussion of ending those retaliatory tariffs against U.S.
Well, they're not
farmers and ranchers?
retaliatory. They're really trying to get some really bad things from happening. They were dumping in our country, and it was China and various others were dumping massive amounts of dead steel. It's called dead steel. It's also imperfect steel. Inside that steel was a lot of bad things that make for a weaker steel. So when we're building bridges and you have mud steel or you have other quantities of other material in that steel, that's a very bad thing. It's very unsafe. So it's not just economic. It's, you know, we have, the miners have been very thankful for what I've done. You saw that the other night in West Virginia. And we have metallurgic coal and other materials. We have mines that are opening up now to get that incredible stuff. This is used not for heating and cooling. This is used in electric. This is used to make steel. And those mines are now opening up, and we're making steel. And the price is going to end up being less because we don't have the shipping problems when you ship it from places so far away. You'll see. We'll have hundreds of new plants opened up in our country, and they'll be competing against each other. And outsiders won't be able to compete. Just so you understand what was going to happen, they were going to knock out every steel plant we had. And then they were going to double and triple the price, and we couldn't have done anything about it. It's a very dangerous thing. And we've employed a lot of people, and billions of dollars is now flowing into our treasury. Okay, yeah, in the back, please. Please.
Staying here on trade, the stock market has liked the announcement today. When we walked in here, the Dow was up 250 points or so. There are some who are worried that because of the threat of future tariffs, it could potentially stifle an economy that is hot, a stock market that is hot, but yet today you have once again said, hey, as it relates to China, more tariffs could be coming down the line. Are you worried that potentially you are somewhat suppressing this economy from running further?
No, I'm using them to negotiate, and hopefully we can make a great deal with China, a fair deal, and a reciprocal deal, but a great deal and a fair deal. We have a lot of catching up to do with China. You know, when they drain us for $500 billion a year, which is probably the real number, and that's not including the theft of intellectual property and other things. And a lot of people say it's hard to value, but a lot of people say that could be $300 billion a year. That's a tremendous. You just can't let that happen. No, we're using tariffs very successfully to negotiate, and if we're unable to make a fair deal, then we'll use tariffs. But Mexico, and if you look at Mexico and Canada, they're way beyond that. We have a deal that really works. And the nice part about the deal we make with them is it's not a specific product. It's a product all across the line, whether it's dairy or, just a lot of products. You see the list of products. There are many, many products, and they're all included. So it's across the board.
Mr. President, with China, one more on trade, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Mr. President, if the FBI does find something and Brett Kavanaugh falls, is there a plan B?
I don't want to talk about plan B because I hope that he gets approved. I hope that the report comes out like it should, like I really think it should. I think it will. I hope. But look, I'm waiting just like you. Certainly, if they find something, I'm going to take that into consideration. Absolutely. I have a very open mind. The person that takes that position is going to be there for a long time. I have a very open mind. I just think he's an outstanding person. I think he has been treated horribly. Even if you were going to bring up some of the subjects that were brought up, they didn't have to treat him so viciously and so violently as they've treated him.
Can I just ask on trade?
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Shut down your box, okay? Yeah, we got still